The holiday is over, yet its reverberations linger in the souls of the Hutchings family. Halloween stands as the sole evening annually when creatures benignly wander amongst us. It's an occasion where all don costumes and masks, embarking on a playful venture. But consider if beneath one of those disguises lurks a genuinely malevolent being, intent on transforming nightmares into actuality. Nicole Marie Hutchings, affectionately called Nikki by her close ones, was born in San Francisco, California, on the 15th of June, 1983. Her biological father was replaced by a stepfather, James Hutchings, yet their bond was so profound it mirrored that of a natural father and daughter. From her early years, James nurtured Nicole as if she were his own, earning the endearing title Dad from her. As time passed, two additional children, Amanda and Timothy, were welcomed into the Hutchings fold. Following James's departure from the Marine Corps in 1987, he, along with his spouse Robin, chose to bring up their offspring in a more serene setting. They relocated to Bend, Oregon, where Nikki experienced her first snowfall. Nestled in the core of Oregon's Cascade Mountains, Bend boasted an idyllic blend of outdoor adventures, including skiing, mountain biking, and trekking, alongside a flourishing arts community, replete with a dynamic arts scene, a burgeoning craft beer sector, and an array of gastronomic venues. This juxtaposition is evident in the town's scenery, where quaint brick edifices and verdant tree-fringed avenues grace the downtown district, and at a distance, lofty pines and rugged mountain summits prevail. It was in this locale that the Hutchings clan found their home, settling into an idyllic 3-bedroom, 2-bath residence perched along the Deschutes River's edge, with the river flowing directly into their backyard, presenting endless fishing prospects. Once, Nikki's parents brought the young girl to Drake Park, a favorite among the city's green spaces, renowned for its array of events throughout the year, including musical evenings and open-air cinema showings. It also served as an ideal spot for tranquil nature strolls. It was in this setting that Nikki, upon seeing duck sculptures for the first time and struggling with her early speech, affectionately dubbed her grandfather Grandpa Duck. As Nikki matured, the park continued to hold a special place in her heart, remaining a preferred spot in the city. Eager for school, Nikki looked forward to acquiring new knowledge. Additionally, she had a passion for hiking, crafting, and composing poems. She was a student at Mountain View Middle School, where she was well liked by many peers, though her frankness occasionally led to confrontations, including one significant altercation that resulted in her expulsion. After finishing her schooling in 2004, Nikki made her way back home. The Hutchings family cherished their moments together in their abode. By then, they had relocated to a comparable 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom residence, situated a 15-minute drive from their previous location, in a more densely populated suburban area. Positioned at the end of a cul-de-sac, the Hutchinson home boasted stunning views of the mountains. With the annual celebration of All Saints' Day, or Halloween as it's widely recognized, on the horizon, the children of Bend, akin to their counterparts across the United States, delighted in dressing up for trick-or-treating. Nearly every home was adorned with decorations, and residents prepared sweets in anticipation, warmly welcoming the small witches and phantoms who would visit. By this period, the Hutchings offspring had matured, finding themselves more captivated by gatherings and celebratory events than the tradition of trick-or-treating. Nikki had reached the age of 21, Amanda was 17, and Timmy had just celebrated his 13th birthday. On the evening of Sunday, October 31st, 2004, Amanda was preparing for her shift at a nearby department store, planning to conclude her duties around 8 p.m. Lacking a driver's license, she depended on her parents or Nikki for a ride home. Despite the store's proximity, Amanda hesitated to trek back alone after dusk, particularly on Halloween. Hence, she requested Nikki for a pickup, but Nikki had plans to stay in, distributing sweets. Their dad, Jim, then a bus operator, offered to fetch her, prioritizing his daughter's safety above all. Before departing, Nicole, with a grave expression, sought a moment to discuss something significant with Amanda upon her return, hinting at another bout of her imaginative notions. The day unfolded ordinarily enough, with Robin and Nikki engaging joyfully in candy distribution to the visiting youngsters, reminiscent of the times the Hutchings themselves went trick-or-treating. Now, finding amusement in their role reversal, they relished the experience. After Jim came home and dined, he left to collect Amanda and attend to some chores. By 10 p.m., when the doorbell rang again, it seemed too late for youthful jests. With Robin occupied, Nikki answered the door, only to find a pleasant surprise. Several of her friends stood there, en route to a nearby Halloween festivity at a friend's place, eager for Nikki to join. Thrilled at the prospect, Nikki was all set to partake in the holiday merriment. Nikki informed her mother of her plans to enjoy the evening with her companions. Robin, undisturbed by her daughter's autonomous nature, trusted Nikki's responsible demeanor. She bid her a wonderful time, sending her off to the celebration with ease of mind. Unbeknownst to her, this farewell would mark the final occasion she'd witness the joyful grin of her eldest child. The memory of Nikki's final Halloween will eternally resonate with her family. The celebration was brimming with both acquaintances and unknown faces, all seemingly enjoying the revelry. Nikki, having been informed of the event last minute, attended in her regular attire, lacking the time for elaborate preparations. The atmosphere was charged with boisterous music, with attendees engaging in typical youthful merriment, drinking, dancing, and reveling deep into the early hours of November 1st. As the spectral night's excitement faded and life's regular rhythm resumed, the Hutchings family too began their day, immersed in routine morning activities. It was during this time that Jim realized Nikki's absence. Her bedroom was empty, a stark contrast to the last memory he had of her, diligently filling out a job application. Returning the previous evening with Amanda, he had presumed Nikki was asleep. Upon learning from Robin that Nikki had ventured to a Halloween festivity, Jim initially thought she might be recuperating from the night's excesses at a friend's house, expecting her return or a call by midday. However, as daylight waned and normalcy enveloped the town, Nikki's presence remained conspicuously absent. Her belongings, including her purse and identification, lay undisturbed in her room, a silent testament to her unanticipated departure. Concern deeply rooted in their hearts, her parents initiated a series of calls to Nikki's friends, desperate for any clue of her whereabouts. The evening was consumed with efforts to trace her, a prelude to the harrowing decision of involving law enforcement. Despite their exhaustive inquiries, Nikki's location remained a mystery. At this juncture, the Hutchings family was overwhelmed by a foreboding sense of dread, prompting them to contact the Bend Police Department. At the station, they were informed that Halloween night is notoriously one of the worst nights of the year due to a significant surge in criminal activity. The period is rife with car break-ins, vandalism, alcohol-related offenses, violence, and even fatal crimes. The police typically do not immediately respond to reports of missing adults, as many return after a short period. However, the fact that Nikki's money and identification were still at home raised concerns. The Bend police were aware that Nikki was 21 years old, stood at 5 feet 5 inches, weighed 159 pounds, and had chestnut hair and blue eyes. Additional unique identifiers included a small gap between her front teeth, a pierced tongue, and tattoos of a rose and a dolphin on the back of her left shoulder. She was last seen wearing a dark burgundy polo shirt with an emblem, black pants, and white tennis shoes. Detective Brian Kendall from the Bend Police Department met with the Hutchington family to compile a comprehensive report. He spoke with Robin, Amanda, and Jim, who shared their insights. Amanda mentioned that her sister wanted to discuss something serious with her that evening. The parents informed the detective about Nikki's ex-boyfriend, Bobby. Initially, he was well-liked by the family, appearing very charming and fitting in well, but over time they began to suspect that he was concealing his true nature, especially concerning Nikki. Detective Kendall resolved to pursue the individual for any further details. He intended to question Nikki's acquaintances regarding the whereabouts of the Halloween celebration, including inquiries about the organizer and all attendees. Concurrently, the Hutchings family was engulfed in distress. given the absence of any updates on Nikki for more than a day. Upon meeting Bobby, the detectives inquired about Nikki. He insisted he was not monitoring his former partner, noting their separation had occurred just the weekend before. Despite the detectives' skepticism, a lie detector test indicated he was truthful. It was later established that he had an alibi for the night of Halloween, prompting the authorities to shift their focus elsewhere. The Bend police force released a statement soliciting any information regarding Nikki Hutchings, urging the public to reach out to Detective Kendall. A woman named Mary came forward with crucial information. She mentioned her cohabitants, Lauren Bowers and Craig Whiting, had hosted the Halloween festivity Nikki attended. Bowers had a girlfriend with 2 children. One was 6 years old and the other was 4. Nikki would constantly come over to look after them, and that's how she met Mary. At the party was nothing unusual about it. Many people came and went during the night, and some brought friends along. At least the detectives now had 2 people they could contact. Quickly obtaining the address, the police officers went to Lauren and Craig to find out more details. That's how they spoke with Bowers' 30-year-old girlfriend. Craig was identified as a close acquaintance of the Hutchings and frequently visited in the evenings to extend party invitations to Nikki. He recalled seeing her last at the party close to midnight, a time when alcohol consumption was rampant, leaving everyone clueless about her subsequent whereabouts. While her friends were deeply concerned for her safety, they remained hopeful for her return. Alas, she had vanished without a trace since the event. Investigators questioned other attendees of the gathering, yet no one could precisely recall the moment of her departure. It seemed as though the young woman had abruptly vanished into thin air. The police pondered various scenarios. Had Nikki exited the premises by herself that evening? Was she under the influence, or had she been kidnapped? Could there have been an individual with nefarious intentions lurking? However, with no definitive answers at hand, they proceeded with their probe, deciding to broaden the search to include areas beyond the state lines. Nikki's photograph, together with comprehensive details regarding her vanishing, was circulated among law enforcement agencies nationwide. With the absence of fresh leads, investigators opted to scrutinize the backgrounds of the residents of the home where the festivity was held, in addition to the attendees. It was imperative to begin their inquiry from some point. Craig was found to have a clean criminal history, whereas Lauren Bowers appeared to have a questionable incident related to Nikki. The revelation was shocking. It emerged that the man had been a convicted offender a decade ago. Lauren had faced accusations of contributing to the delinquency of minors. Now, aged 34, he openly acknowledged his previous wrongdoing to Detective Kendall, offering his cooperation in the search for Nikki as a gesture of his reformed character. This information was disconcerting, yet no direct link or proof suggested Lauren's involvement in Nikki's disappearance. The investigation was still in its preliminary phase of collecting information. In the meantime, Nikki's relatives initiated a community search in Bend. They disseminated leaflets bearing her image and particulars, engaged with local broadcasters, and reiterated their appeal for any leads to be reported to the authorities. Subsequent reports claimed sightings of the young woman in various locales within the city, albeit without verification. Nonetheless, these accounts provided the Hutchings family with a glimmer of hope. Jim, employed as a bus operator, would meticulously survey Drake Park, Nikki's cherished locale, each time he drove by in the hopes of spotting her. Accepting the grim reality of her absence was a challenge for the family, who clung to the hope of her return. Each knock at the door raised expectations that it might be Nikki, yet it never was. The situation then took a grim twist. An informant disclosed to the police that an individual known as Spider had admitted to his acquaintances that he was responsible for Nicole's murder and had concealed her remains on his property. His actual identity was Danny Shane, a felon affiliated with a local gang dubbed the Park Rats, notorious for their criminal activities in Bend, especially around Drake Park. Nikki and Danny Shane were familiar with each other, having been classmates in middle school, though Spider had undergone significant changes since those days. When interrogated, he asserted that he had encountered the young woman a few weeks prior, aligning with the timeline of her vanishing. After successfully completing a polygraph examination, he was exonerated and released. The aerial units of the Bend Police Department were deployed to scrutinize Danny's land from the sky in search of any signs of soil disturbance indicative of a burial site, but their search yielded no results. As days turned into weeks and then months, the Hutchings prepared themselves for the possibility of receiving dire news, with the likelihood of Nikki being found alive dwindling. Nikki's 13-year-old sibling, Tim, who looked up to her immensely, was particularly devastated, leaving the family in a state of disarray. In a subsequent development, the Portland Police Department in Oregon reached out to the Hutchings family. The call they received was one no family ever wishes to get. They were informed about the discovery of a body that bore a resemblance to Nikki, and they were summoned for identification. The news sent shockwaves through the family, but Jim had one pressing inquiry: whether the deceased had a dolphin tattoo on her left shoulder. The agonizing wait for a response seemed endless, with the family grappling with the possibility of Nikki's demise. The moment the officer informed Jim that the discovered body lacked the tattoo, a fleeting relief washed over the Hutchings. Nonetheless, they were painfully aware that this meant another family would soon be confronted with heartbreaking news concerning their loved one. Investigators monitored Nikki's financial and digital footprints, including her credit card, bank account, and cell phone. After months of perseverance, they were alerted to activity on one of Nikki's cards, igniting a flicker of hope that she could be alive. This hope was swiftly dashed when Nikki's mother, Robin, disclosed she had been using her daughter's credit card, dashing any renewed hope. As time progressed, interactions with the detectives became less frequent, reflecting the stagnation of the case, and life for the Hutchings seemed to pause. Amanda pursued her high school studies and had applied to colleges, including the University of Minnesota, where she awaited acceptance letters. These aspirations now felt insignificant in the shadow of her sister's disappearance. However, she was later informed of her acceptance to the University of Minnesota with a full scholarship. Despite the joy this brought, she found herself unable to leave her family during such a distressing period. The narrative surrounding Nikki Hutchings' disappearance only unfolded after 3 painstaking years. It became evident that someone was concealing a vital piece of information, possessing full knowledge of the events that transpired, but lacking the courage to disclose the truth. In March 2007, a woman known as Jenny entered the Bend police station, seeking to speak with the detective leading the Hutchings investigation. As an old acquaintance of Nikki and the former girlfriend of Lauren Bowers, with whom she had 2 children, Jenny was driven by their rocky past and subsequent breakup to share what she knew. Initially interviewed after Nikki vanished, she had lied to protect herself. Jenny disclosed that Lauren, her ex, confessed to ending Nikki's life, though at that time, there was no concrete proof or remains to corroborate his admission. The detectives devised a strategy, persuading Jenny to covertly record a conversation with Lauren by wearing a wire and probing him about Nikki. The meeting was set in a park where Jenny, under immense pressure, inquired about Nikki's fate. Lauren, initially wary, eventually confided in Jenny due to her previous silence. He justified his actions by alleging Nikki was a threat to their relationship and he could not risk returning to jail. Jenny's persistent questioning nearly compromised the operation, yet managed to secure Lauren's confession. Lauren was apprehended on March 12th, a measure taken partly to safeguard Jenny from potential repercussions. Further investigations into Lauren's past unveiled 2 prior convictions for sexual assault, resulting in a 2-year prison sentence. His victims were aged between 13 and 16. Post-release in 1997, Lauren briefly evaded his parole obligations and was later convicted for unlawful possession of a firearm, theft, and lying to the police. Upon arrest, an emotional Lauren denied any involvement in Nikki's disappearance, accusing his friend Craig Whiting of framing him, a claim that ultimately proved true. Craig Whiting, who came to pick up Nikki on that Halloween evening, was a close family friend of the Hutchings, having lived under the same roof with them for some time. He took a deep breath and stated that Lauren had asked him to help get rid of the girl. Craig said that Nikki had started spreading rumors about Lauren, alleging that he had inappropriately touched one of the children she was babysitting. If this were to come out, it would land Bowers back in prison. The children had told Nikki about Lauren's inappropriate actions and how he had photographed one of them without clothing. It was a serious accusation that could have severe consequences. Nikki informed the child's mother about the incident and then went further by filing a formal complaint with the Oregon Department of Human Services. Lauren understood that this could land him back in prison and decided to take drastic action. But how did Craig fit into all of this? It turned out that Craig had a disturbing childhood experience that had a profound impact on his psyche. When he was 11 years old, his mother's partner beat her to death and then hid her body in the basement under their trailer, where they lived next to the decomposing remains for several weeks. Perhaps this left a mark on Craig's entire life. However, he justified his actions regarding Nikki by claiming that Lauren was like a brother to him. If a brother asked for help, he felt obliged to do everything for him. It took a couple of days before Craig agreed to show detectives where they had buried Nikki's body. This helped him avoid the death penalty, but he showed no remorse or compassion. It was a very remote area in the middle of the forest, about 20 miles from the Halloween party location. Craig led the police to a spot amidst the trees where, according to him, Nikki met her demise. In a shallow grave, officers found what they believed to be Nikki Hutchings's remains. Nikki had done everything possible to protect an innocent child and ensure their safety, only to encounter the monster who would likely silence her rather than face the consequences of his despicable actions. As early as October 2004, they, along with their best friend Craig, devised a plan to get rid of Hutchings. This led them to organize a large Halloween party. On the eve of the incident, they journeyed to a secluded spot and excavated a shallow grave, approximately 3 feet in depth. During Halloween, Craig enticed Nikki from her residence. At the celebration, they incapacitated the young woman by spiking her beverage with a painkiller, leaving her scarcely able to control her legs. She was utterly incapacitated. Companions placed her in a vehicle, with Lauren at the wheel, transporting her to the predetermined grave site. Nikki, feeble, was escorted to a makeshift burial pit, where Bowers delivered a blow to her skull using a bat adorned with a weighty metallic end. Craig believed a single hit would render her unconscious, yet it merely caused Nicole to stumble, prompting her to attempt to stand. Subsequently, Lauren seized a branch from White, assaulting her repeatedly until she fell into unconsciousness. Before Nicole ceased breathing, they disrobed her and cast her into the trench, subsequently covering it with dense soil. The most harrowing aspect of this narrative is that Nikki was still breathing at that juncture, perishing alone in the dense woodland, betrayed by 2 individuals she considered close on that dread-filled evening. Upon notifying the Hutchings family of Nikki's demise, her parents were astounded. Craig, whom they had welcomed into their home, and Lauren, a companion of Nikki. Jim's memory of identifying his daughter's dolphin insignia at the coroner's office is indelible. He expressed a desire to personally address these culprits, sparing the expense to taxpayers. Regrettably, legal constraints made this impossible. Nearly a year would pass before Lauren and Craig admitted guilt for the savage attack, each receiving a sentence of lifetime imprisonment without the chance for parole. The very nightmare they dreaded, which led to Nicole Hutchings' death in an effort to shield another's offspring, had come to pass. Now, these fiends are condemned to recall the young woman who attained retribution, even beyond the grave. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.